Welcome to Bookin' It. Today's episode will be Return to the Wingfeather Saga. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bookin' It. I'm, of course, your eloquent host, Cooper Cobbs, and if it is your first time listening to the podcast, let me extend a very warm welcome to you. We're so glad that you've joined us. Let me introduce the people who will be discussing this wonderful series with us today. Firstly, to my right, Mr. Bryson Boswick.
Yay, I wasn't last. Thank goodness.
The reason I said your name first, Bryson, was because, I'll be honest, the last two times we recorded with you, typically when you'll see in a second, when I introduce them, the other people, mysterious people, I say their last names, right? Yeah. But then I had a brain fart when I was saying your last names. And so, last episode, it was really awkward. I said, Mr. Bryson, Mr. Bryson. And something like that. And it was really weird. So I was like, make a mental note. You got to say his last name right this time. So I knew your last name, but I just didn't, Anyway, glad to have you on with us, Bryson. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back again.
All right, over there, we got Mr. Tanner Lewis.
Howdy, folks.
The guy who tried to sing harmony a second ago to a Wingfeather song and failed. But
I didn't try to sing harmony. I tried to be weird. There's a difference.
Well, it worked.
Bryson sang harmony.
Oh,
and it was
yeah.
Bryson was great. Yeah.
I'm good, dude.
And then to my left over here, we got Mr. Isaiah Rayetsky, editor extraordinaire, guy who likes to...
I have all the power.
Yeah, likes to have power. That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
All right, guys. Well, so we are today beginning our series on the Wingfeather Saga. Now, if you are an old listener, you might recall that way back when, we have episodes on the Wingfeather Saga, starting in episode 11 and going through 20-something. But we are returning to the Wingfeather Saga, namely because we want to get better at discussing the series, because we are really not great, I guess, back then.
No, we were not.
But, we understand a lot of you guys listening actually probably started listening to those and came here. So we're super glad you found us through those. But we thought it'd be really fun to go back and redo episodes on the Wingfeather Saga to kind of do them justice and, help you guys enjoy our episodes better. But I think what we're going to do is next week, when we actually discuss On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, I think we're going to have somebody listen to the old episodes and then say what we said. And we'll do that for every single book. So I'll have to say, this is the first of 6 episodes of the Wingfeather Saga. We'll do one per book. Those will kind of be longish episodes per book. And then at the very end, we'll do a recap discussion looking back like we've done before on other series. So
to see how we've improved from the last one.
Exactly. And then also you can expect a bonus episode on the animated series, somewhere in between there. So we don't know when that's going to be yet, but we'll discuss that animated series. So it's just going to be fun. We have a lot to say. Bryson especially was jumping at the bit.
Man, I just want to get at it. Let's go discuss it.
All right, so let's start with a history. So when did you guys first experience the Wingfeather Saga? What's your history with it? When did you first encounter it? What's your thoughts? Go ahead, Bryson. Why don't you start us off, Bryson?
Yeah, so I was listening to the first episode that y'all did on the Wingfeather Saga a few days ago, and literally I have almost the same exact experience getting to know Andrew Peterson and the Wingfeather Saga that all of y'all do. Mm-hmm. And so, back during the lockdown, during COVID, Mama said, man, there's this guy, his name is Andrew Peterson, and he started reading his books on Facebook, and so every night we'd start listening to him at 7 p.m. That was a great time, yeah, those are good memories. I don't remember being so excited to listen to a book before. Yeah. But, man, I was into it. And so, but I do remember, I will say, Mama had the old versions of the books. I remember seeing the old versions of the books in Mama's Amazon cart 5 years before that. And that was the first time I'd ever seen anything about it, but I was like, oh, those don't look fun at all. Those are going to be terrible books. But no, then listening to the read aloud, it was just, I fell in love with the books, and I was...
You judged the book by its cover, apparently.
Yeah, so after that, got into Andrew Peterson's music and loved that as well, too, so... Yeah, just... That's
right. You named your email is literally off of one of his songs.
Yes, so I named...
we won't give your email out, obviously.
No, but it definitely has inspired me a whole lot, and I will say really helped me grow in my faith. Mm-hmm. Just Andrew Peterson as a whole, both through his books and through his music. But,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Tanner, why don't you go next?
My story is similar but not. So the first time that I ever remember seeing an Andrew Peterson book, or the Wingfeather Saga specifically, was on a mission trip, actually. I had a good friend whose family was really into Andrew Peterson. I did not know who the guy was at the time. This is probably like 2018, 2017, something like that. And I'm just like, okay, well, this book looks interesting. And then 2 years later, I get my Kindle, this notorious Kindle around here.
Yeah.
The guys know what this...
It's fun. It's an inside joke here.
It's an inside joke. The Kindle does exist, though. And I see on my Kindle suggested that, like, the Wingfeather Saga. And I'm like, this is interesting. And I don't pick it up because I'm like, actually, that's a lie. I did the sample. I sampled it, and I read the first chapter of On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, and 13-year-old Tanner was like, yeah, no, this is weird. This is scary. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So I turned that off. And then Andrew Peterson is doing the read-along on YouTube, and my mom's like, oh, we're gonna watch this as a family. We're gonna read this together. We're gonna listen to Andrew Peterson read this. And I'm like, okay. And so we're listening/watching to him read it. And I'm like, ooh, this is really good. And I can't keep waiting for him to read like 1 or 2 chapters every night. So me being Tanner, I get it on my Kindle and I read it all in like 2 nights. And
classic.
Yes. And I continue to do that for like the entire series while my family listens to it.
Great.
It's my story.
Yeah, it's one of those things like that happened to me with Narnia, where they read aloud. My parents were reading aloud, but then they were too slow, so I just kind of picked up the books and went along. So yeah,
I do remember that though, because Tanner, that reminds me. A lot of people I know have said the same exact thing. We're like, oh, I read the first chapter and it was terrible, and like I stopped reading.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is kind of hard to get into the very beginning, but I mean, once you get over that hump, it's just.
Yeah, and that happened to Matthew as well, the guy who just graduated from college, and Bryson is taking over his role. Yeah, Bryson. But he tried to get through it and couldn't make it. But then he had to read it for the podcast and got through it and liked it.
Forced.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, forced to do it.
So, Isaiah, what are you?
So, I mean, the first time I ever read it was like what they said, I guess, was listening to it during COVID. But I remember you, Cooper, and Ian, who used to go to school with us, a couple years before that, kept telling me about this book, and I was like, this sounds so weird and lame and boring. It's about some kids and they're fighting wolves or whatever, and I didn't like reading at the time anyway.
The fangs from Dang.
Yeah, you guys didn't tell me what that was. You're like, they're just fighting the fangs, and then these other weird creatures, and you just named off the creatures.
Nag,
I'm like,
the nameless, like what the heck? Like,
and I didn't like to read at the time.
Whose name is
like
Nag.
Reading was not at all what I did at that time. So I knew about the book. I didn't know it was this book until I started listening to it in COVID time. Yeah. So that's when I guess I heard about it way before. Just didn't realize what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and listening to it, did any of y'all have the same kind of like, I know when I got into it, I was like, I'm not going to like it. I'm not going to like it. And then listening to him read it, I was like, I can't help it. It's so good.
Yeah.
That's great.
It's really his voices that
he's great. Yeah.
That endeared me. You know, even now when I'm like reading it, I can't not hear his voice. Like,
which is why I'm so glad that the audiobook is done by him.
The audiobook is his voice. Yeah. The audiobook.
And he plays Oscar in the series, the animated series as well, which is great too. So
Oscar and Ratib.
Oscar and Ratib. Well, so I'm actually probably the only one of us who actually had history that goes before COVID. So this is a long time ago. This was 6 or 7 years ago, and I have to give credit for many things of this vein to my a dear family of ours, the Amersons, who Keenan is actually a supporter of ours once we get to donor shout-outs. But their family, they kind of experienced Andrew Peterson and the Grey Havens and all that kind of like stuff, you know what I'm talking about, like before us. And so they kind of introduced us to all of that. And so they're really big in getting us into Andrew Peterson and his music, and especially the Wingfeather Saga. So I was probably in 4th grade or 5th grade, actually, when I first started reading the Wingfeather Saga. And now that was Mom reading it aloud. Okay. This is during school hours. So you would have time where she would, during like 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, read these aloud. And this was before I had like a ton of school to do, so I could just listen. And I remember Mom like getting up on the whiteboard, and she was kind of being annoying in my like 4th grade mind of like, okay, so Dang is on the right side of the ocean. We have the Dark Sea of Darkness, and we have Scree on the left side. Anyway, but I remember that. But like,
I'm glad I was so lost. I was so lost there.
And like, what is like? It's weird. It's the toothy cow. Like, what's going on? I still remember that first time I started reading it. Like, it was a bright day, and hearing toothy cow and Mom trying to explain everything. Anyway, I'll just say,
confusing.
She read most of the books during the day and tried to get my dad to kind of hop in during the first book, and try to read it at night when Dad could read it. Anyway, all to say, we get to North of Eden, and the story gets really, really good. And then Dad started reading it at night, And I still remember the time where something happens in the second book that's very sad. I won't spoil it now, but I remember feeling very sad about it, looking at my mom. And I remember these moments when we were reading aloud as a family. And at the end of the fourth book, it was one of those situations where both parents tried to finish it. They couldn't. I had to finish the series. Like Bronze Bow is one of those things. Or the Wingfeather Saga was one of those where both parents were knocked dead because of it.
So powerful.
Yeah, exactly. So that was my first experience, and ever since then, it's been a part. I've shown the guys our books. The old books are autographed by Andrew Peterson. We've seen him a couple times, and he's great. He's a great guy, and his books are great. So then COVID came around, and we listened to a lot of them, but we didn't do all of them because we already read it and things like that. But a lot of you guys and our cousins, Hayden's been on the podcast before. They get into Wingfeather Saga through that. So during COVID, you just read them aloud on Facebook and YouTube, and that was a great way to expand the audience. And that's actually when we were doing our episodes on the podcast was
right after
when that was happening. Yeah,
almost like they were inspired by it.
Almost. Well, it was a great time to get those episodes out there. So,
yeah.
Well, I guess let's just move into opening thoughts. Wingfeather Saga. What are your thoughts? When you first experienced it, and now, what do you think? Give it to us.
I guess I'll start. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like I already kind of mentioned earlier, I did not. Well, okay, I'll just say this. When I first started listening to it, I did not want to at all because my mom was forcing me to listen to that instead of going to hang out with friends or play video games or whatever. But after getting through the first few chapters, it was great. I absolutely love the series. I would say if anyone's reading it for the first time, just stick through it and read the first bit and just keep reading, even if it's a bit boring or strange and you don't know what's going on, because it is really good.
It is.
Yeah, I definitely love the series. He's a great writer and all that. So
great, yeah.
Yeah, I think that similar to Isaiah, it was hard to get into for the first portion of it. I mean, it was easy after as I said, I tried to read it on my own and I'm like, yeah, no. But then when he was reading it, on the TV or doing it live, doing that was it was so much easier to get into, after you got through the first 4 or 5 chapters.
Yeah.
Because you're what the heck is happening for the first 5 chapters, and then you're eventually you just embrace the world that he's created fully, and you're past the this is cringy, this is for little kids and 7 or 8 year olds.
It comes out weird. There's so many jokes and some of Nad the Nameless, the Nameless Evil named Nad.
You can't even read the introduction without laughing. It's just
and then the footnotes are hitting you right and left, and you're what the heck?
And then you're oh, that's such a little boogers and all of this stuff,
and
you're
making weird jokes.
It's you're just this is not for me.
The world building can seem a little jarring at how funny and not serious it takes itself, and we'll talk about that when we actually discuss the first book in depth. Is it actually boring in the beginning, or is it start slow, the world building and the jokes and things like that? But it can be a little off-putting to people at first, especially with how similar but not. What are
exactly.
Are tomatoes or potatoes? Are they a mix of both?
I remember listening to Matthew.
Pineapples.
Matthew had a real problem with that. Why can't it just be normal?
Yes, I remember that.
Everything is just almost right, but not really. Things like that, So
just change it a little bit so it's a new world.
Yeah.
Yeah, but after that, after we get through those first 5 chapters, I was enthralled.
Yes.
Honestly,
was great.
Especially I remember I had it was halfway through the Green Hollow or Monster in the Hollows, yeah. And it was just then that I'm yeah, no, definitely one of the top book series that I've ever read.
Yeah.
Period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember, so we've, over the podcast years, we've talked about Andy Wilson, a year and a half ago now.
Oh, yeah, that's
we talked
wild.
about The Green Emperor last year this time. And so these are kind of in the same vein, the same people like these kind of things. I think the Wingfeather Saga is the best of all those.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't think Andrew Peterson is as good of a writer as Andy Wilson is. I think Andy Wilson's just better with words and poetry and things like that. But I think the Wingfeather Saga is better than anything he's done. I think it's better than Green Ember. So I think it's immersive. It's world built impeccably, but also it brings you alongside. Andy Wilson he's doing flourishes there and flourishes here and things like that, and it's really cool, and I like that stuff as well. But he's just telling you Andrew Peterson is a great story, one that we can all relate to as all older siblings, all guys. That's something that we'll talk about as well, just identifying with Jan or with Arthur and things like that. And it's just so relatable and real and raw, and also fun and whimsical. It's just a complete package. Yeah. And his thing on the website is all the stories are true. you know, and it's like they're not. This is not a literal history, obviously, but they ring true, obviously, and that's just what is the most appealing to me about them.
Yeah, because I know y'all, especially you, Tanner and Cooper, really love Tolkien and how he writes his whole world. It is a complete world. Andrew Peterson doesn't spend nearly as much time as Tolkien, but he still creates what you feel is a real, whole, complete world that you could be in yourself.
Right.
And you could be you could be a character in this story. And really, all of us are. He kind of forces us to be characters in this story.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Oh, yeah.
But
like, I guess I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next episode when we actually, like, go into the first book. But
I know. There are so many things I'm wanting to say
Yeah,
when I'm like, restrain.
Yeah, it's just like he brings you in so close, and it's not until, like, this is my third or fourth time reading it now, right? And during this, like, as I'm listening to the book right now on Audible, like, I am just struck with all of the ties that he's brought back into everything, and it's incredible.
Yeah, he plans it out very well, like setups and payoffs and everything like that too. Yeah.
The world is complete before the first sentence is done. Like,
and when we get to it, I will say that I am pro footnote because they're not only are they funny, but they world build like insane.
No, they're
like,
great.
They're expanding the world, places you've never heard of. Iceberg theory, you know, he's showing you a little bit and making it seem like it's a lot. Even as like the publishers and the dates, like what? That's awesome.
I
You
know.
That's awesome.
and it took him all of like, he talked about this on the YouTube a little bit, like at one point, but he's like, it took me all of like 2 minutes for most of these footnotes, and I'm like, that's incredible.
Yeah, what I like is like he didn't just start with 2 years of world building before he started writing. He had these characters and these fun ideas and just made it up as he went along, you know? And they can kind of tell, like, oh, that footnote is just he wants to expand on that here. That's a great joke. But it works so well. Like, you don't need to spend so many years beforehand planning a world building. It did as they went, and these footnotes write themselves, basically, you know?
Yeah,
so.
didn't he say he was telling these as, like, stories to his kids at first, or like the beginnings of the stories? I feel like I've heard something about that.
I feel like I heard something like that, yeah.
But, yeah, like, it was just, which kind of reminds me of Hesiod, which I don't really want to bring back in here because I kind of want to leave him behind. But also just being able to tell a story, speaking it, and using art and using poetry and kind of drawing that together in one magnificent story. And yeah, he composed these just orally, and then wrote them down in this.
Right, and he's a singer songwriter, right?
Yeah,
like
so it comes naturally to him.
It works perfectly in this story. And I think one thing that I really like about it is like he seamlessly like invites us in. I talked about this. Like there are some stories and performances and things like that which kind of like push you out and like force you to observe what's going on.
Yeah.
That's not what happens here.
We have to break in.
Yeah. But not here. He invites you and welcomes you.
Yeah.
And gives you some of Poto's stew instantly, and you're like, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've been here. So, well, I think we want to talk about like the nature. This last little bit of like reading aloud these stories that we've all referenced. It was him reading aloud or our parents reading aloud that really kind of got us going. So, I don't know if you guys want to talk about like what is about this story being read aloud or books being read aloud in general that makes them so appealing, especially this story.
So I guess I'll start. The Hobbit. Okay.
Yeah.
Everything goes, as Bryson said earlier, everything goes back to Tolkien.
Everything goes. Oh boy.
But like it's a fireside chat, right? And I mean, whenever I first started like actually reading and listening to this, right? Like it's cold, it's winter outside, and I'm literally sitting by my fire watching this guy read it next to his fire on the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was something. He welcomed us into his home to then welcome us into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I thought that was really cool.
Layers upon layers.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it's just like, it was something about that atmosphere that made it desirable, you know? Like the way that I first read it, the way that I first listened to it, having the actual author reading it and like reading it to you, giving it to you how he like was thinking it. It was just something different than like anything else that I've ever read, you know? It's almost as if you had Tolkien sitting there with you, like, and you're in the same room as Tolkien.
American Tolkien, but yes.
Yeah, like an American Tolkien, right? But it's almost like you had Tolkien sitting next to you and like reading you The Hobbit and telling you, oh my gosh, isn't this just amazing?
Right.
Yeah.
And those lines like in The Hobbit where he says, you know, Bilbo, not for the last time, wished he was home. And it's like just talking to you.
Or like Janner, like wishes that he hadn't done blank, and you're like,
oh, relatable. I feel that.
It's
feel
so
that right
good.
here. Yeah. I feel that right here. Yeah, he's not afraid to like give you the raw side of his characters, and that's one thing I really appreciate, especially relating to him. So
yeah, and spending so much time, because we were spending a ton of time with Andrew Peterson every night.
Right.
I kind of felt like he was almost a father figure to me in a way, which
Yeah.
is strange, but it felt
True.
that way. And just sitting in front of him, watching him read him and doing all his inflections and faces and stuff like that, and voices, and it also felt like he was guiding me. He's kind of like,
he's your guide in this new world,
yes,
kind of thing.
exactly. He wasn't just a reader. He wasn't just the author. He was also, the person. He was the in-flesh narrator. He was the one that was guiding me through it and
That's a great point.
bringing me into the story.
Yeah, I think that like when you read this aloud, you have a guide. Even a parent reading it aloud can function like that because the book is kind of written like that as well.
Yes.
But also your family is like a support group. Like we are a family. I have 2 younger siblings, just like Janner does. And I have a youngest sister and things like that, and we can just feel that and relate to the characters.
And I will say, listening to it with my family, I know it was a whole lot better and a whole lot more impactful than, say, just reading it by myself. There was something about doing it with my family and experiencing the highs and the lows of the story and having those moments where we're laughing and just can barely breathe, and then those times where we're crying and we're just really affected by the weight on each of the characters. Yeah. Just something about going through a story like that with your family. I know it was, I can kind of feel that now going back and reading it by myself as opposed to listening to it with the rest of my family. But yeah.
No, it functions totally fine reading it alone. Like we've all are doing that now.
Yes.
But it's not as fun when you're sitting in bed, you read a funny footnote, and you kind of chuckle, and you look to your right and to your left, and you're like, nobody's here to laugh with me.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know, like doing it with my family, right? Like we moved to the audiobooks after he kind of finished doing the first 2 books before the next one came out. And like even just with you guys, right? Like, or the guys that Matthew as well. Like we're like all listening to this together, and it's kind of like a group experience, and like you have somebody to talk about it with. Yeah,
one of the reasons we did the podcast. It's just coming alongside each other.
It's a shared memory, like I don't know. I
shared
think that's
collective consciousness.
I know y'all talking
far from it.
No, but it's like a shared memory of these books, right? Like I can walk up to one of my little older sisters who listened to this book with me probably 2 or 3 years ago, right? And she knows, like she remembers the exact same place that I remember of like where we were, like what we were doing, the laughing. Like these are sharp memories, and they're reinforced by this book that we're reading. So it's no longer even just about the book, but it's about like the people that you were sharing it with. And I think that he did a really good job of like writing the book in such a way that it could be for like, it's recreating the campfire setting essentially, right? Like we've kind of moved away from that, and it's
fireside camp.
Yeah, fireside.
Right.
Oh yeah, and sorry, I don't want to.
Well, I just want to say one thing, like going off of that, like Armelin the Bard. I think it's very clearly modeled after Rich Mullins, who I've read stuff Andrew Peterson has great respect for. This barefoot bard kind of guy, and it's clearly what Andrew Peterson wants to be talking about. This guy who's humble but wants to tell you a great story with the full feast of a meal. So
yeah, but I was gonna say. You kind of, I was going to compare it to a lot of the other books that you read, especially nowadays. A lot of them are more reclusive and just, you want to be in your room by yourself reading them because that's just how the books are written, and they're really just.
That's a great point. Can I speak to that real fast? I don't know if you're done. Go ahead. Like, Indy Wilson has talked about this. I think Andrew Peterson does a great job too of like anti-escapism. Of like you want to hang out in this world, but also it opens you up to the wonder and the magic of the real world, which is a fantasy story too. Like Andy Wilson is great at this and talked about this at length of just, we live in a fantasy world. We are on a floating rock suspended on nothing, revolving around a sphere that is burning hotter than we can imagine. What about that is not fantasy? That kind of thing,
What about that is not cool?
Right, exactly. But like Wingfeather Saga, it doesn't encourage you to go read it alone in your room and just kind of like, I want to go to Middle Earth. I want to go to this fun fantasy world. I want to, interact with my siblings better. I want to be a better person. I want to have these shared memories with my family. So that's what happens when you read aloud together, for sure. Yeah. And I think even Isaiah, I know he doesn't love Tolkien all that much.
I think Tolkien does a great job with his writing.
It's not for you.
It's boring. It's not for me.
I got you.
But he does a good job.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
You can't deny that like, reading The Hobbit aloud has a flavor to it, a feeling to it. Like it's just meant to be. It begs to be read aloud.
I haven't done it,
right?
So no idea.
Right, but you could totally see it being read like that. Yeah. And the reference Watership Down too has this flavor of just it begs to be read aloud, and just a story for that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
Wingfeather Saga is a different aspect of that. Like it's meant to be a family meal together, but also it's.
I like
I also
that
just
meal
prefer
thing
being alone and reading stuff alone.
Yeah.
And doing stuff alone. So.
No, it totally is like, you can. I read tons of books alone that I don't know if I could read, as a family.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I think reading as a family is a very important thing, and it should be done more. And I think Wingfeather Saga is one of the best books for doing that.
Oh
So
yeah, for
that's
sure.
what I want. The thesis of this.
Definitely. Without a doubt, agree.
Without a doubt. All right. Well, okay. Real fast. I just want to get like your thoughts on what are you looking forward as we move forward to the Wingfeather Saga. What are you looking for? What are you expecting to see? Is anything going to change? Things like that. Real fast before we.
Well, I'm really looking at. So, I've already read the first book and just really looking through the things I already know, seeing the things that hint to that, like
Foreshadowing.
Yeah, the foreshadowing, and also I am really bad about drawing pictures in my mind from pictures I've already seen.
Okay.
And I want to imagine this book as real in the real world, and it's been really hard for me to do that because I keep picturing animated characters and like in the drawings, and so I want to, as I'm reading this, picture it more as real humans in a real world.
Gotcha.
Experiencing things that I could experience. So
I feel that. Yeah. Isaiah, what about you?
Just I guess to see like what Bryson said, kind of reading it and like seeing like what they hinted at. It was gonna come like foreshadowed in a sense, but also just to remember it all because I haven't read it in a while.
Yeah.
So just like to read it and see like what I forgot and like just remember it all.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be honest. That's another reason why I wanted to do this again was because I'm going off to college next year. We all are, and I want to relive this, one last time and remember it before I head off. So I go next. I'm looking forward to like North of Beaten and Monster in the Hollows. Those are the ones that I don't remember as well as I do like War and the Wolf King and On the Edge. And so I want to see. Those are kind of like flip flop. Like I think War and the Wolf King is unambiguously the best, and On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness it's not the worst, but it's like the least best. You know what I mean? So I'm interested to see what I think about those, and I'll share my thoughts on the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness because I was really looking forward to seeing like how I would react to it, and it was a good reaction. So hint for next time. But I'm looking forward to talking about that. So.
Hint. Well, no, but you just said that kind of ranking the books, and we'll probably go over this when we do the recap of all of them.
Right, we will. Yeah.
But you can tell. Not only does Andrew Peterson's like writing
he gets better,
better, it's maturing and it's on purpose,
right?
Because the characters are maturing.
Yeah,
they're getting older and they're wanting you to. He's wanting you to grow alongside the characters, and so I feel like that's kind of the reason why he builds on each one. He makes each one better than the one before.
And that is one thing. Like if he, I'll talk about this a little bit. But on the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness, there is a little bit of violence in there that I'm like, I mean, for like a 5-year-old, hearing this, like that's. It's not gratuitous or extremely gory, but it's violence. It's there, and that gets even stronger as the series goes along. So that'll be interesting to track and follow.
I guess it's my turn.
Yeah.
I think that the thing that I'm looking most forward to, what I want to get out of this time, my third or fourth time, is I remember the first time I was doing it for like the enjoyment, like I'm sucked into it. The second time was I was kind of looking, well, now that I'd finished it, and I remembered a couple of things that like, oh my gosh, he had a foreshadowing and I didn't recognize it yet. So then I'm doing what I think it was Bryson said he wants to do out of this go round. He wants to see all the foreshadowings.
Isaiah said that too.
All of us have said that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I'm not looking for foreshadowings anymore because that like I think that while it's good and fun, I'm trying to go through it like it's my first time reading it.
You want to be surprised.
Like I want to know. Like I
forgot about that. That's so cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I put in. So I was spraying weeds the other day at one of our houses, and I had my earbuds in, and I just like started the book, right? And as I'm spraying weeds, I'm like, I listened to the first portion, right? And I start hearing footnotes, and I'm like, oh, I know exactly where that. And then I'm like, wait a second, why do I care about that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what is this proving at all? Like, it's not proving anything. And so I then and there decided that this time was going to be a time where so the entire time I sprayed weeds, I turned off the book and didn't actually listen to it for the rest of the time. And I walked around spraying weeds and told myself that I was going to clear my mind of every pre-assumption that I had of the book, and I was going to read it like it's the first time.
Cool.
and I'm going to pick things new up.
Great.
And it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how that goes.
It's going to be a learning experience. Hopefully, we'll see if I mature through it.
As the discerning listener might be able to pick up on, we are very excited to talk about these. And so hope you've enjoyed this kind of prelude episode. We'll be back, I think it's September 25th or so. We're going to be talking about On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. And in the meantime, we'll be talking about the Iliad of Homer. So join us for that, and we'll be back to talk about Wingfeather Saga in a couple weeks. So glad you've enjoyed this episode. We'll move on to some donor shout-outs. So, Bryson, do you know where someone would go if they want a donor shout-out?
Well, they can go to patreon.com/bookingit, and they can apply to support us for...
You don't need to apply. You get instantly accepted.
You have to be approved by us before. And you can support us by donating there. So.
That's
If you have money in your bank account, you're approved.
That's right, exactly. If your credit card works, you're approved. Yeah, exactly right. So I'm going to say the patron, you guys shout them out. We got Nana. Grandpappy and Wayla.
Grandpappy and Wayla.
His grandparents are Mike and Sylvia.
My grandparents.
Yay.
Mike and Laura.
Mike and Laura.
Anna. Emily. And Keenan.
Woo.
All right, well, thank you guys for listening. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. If you haven't, remember, don't get it.
It's the Demon app, according to Cooper.
Whatever. At Booking It Pod. Check out our website in the description. We'll see you next time. Until then,
keep on booking it.